Oh, shoot. I got the wrong.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and in case you caught our older startup music there, you're probably thinking, is it deja vu all over again? Well, I'm here to tell you that you might not be wrong about that, given the fact that this week has brought about a kind of a repetition of things that we have seen in the past. Joining us to talk about a lot that's been happening this week are community and labor activist Barb Ingalls. We have got former WXYZ reporter, looking like he's still in the studio, Jim Kiertzner. We have got community activist and political consultant Anthony Bryant. We have Republican pollster Ed Sarpolus.
Not Republican pollster.
Oh,
Independent.
Independent. We have independent. I stand corrected. Ed Sarpolus, and we have Deadline Detroit co-founder Allan Lengel. So, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? We have, of course, yesterday, the 45th President of the United States, Donald John Trump, being arraigned for his third indictment, this dealing specifically with the January 6, 2021 insurrection. He showed up in Washington, D.C. at the, and you've got to love the irony's not lost about the name of this courthouse, the E. Barrett Prettyman U.S. courthouse, to go ahead and enter his plea of not guilty to 4 counts of which he's been charged. Obstruction and conspiracy to defraud and affect an election. I believe, Allan, because we have an absolute troika of videos, why don't we start off with your choice for the first?
This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. This is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America.
I was going to say, first of all, we were talking before the show, having lived in D.C. for 14 years, I can't tell you how many times I took the trip from National by cab downtown. And it's some of the most beautiful parts of the city, going by the Potomac River. That's it. And going through some of the most grandiose structures of DC. There is no graffiti. There is no rundown. Those buildings are all well kept up, and it's such bullshit. He tries to paint this picture of like decay and all this stuff. I mean, besides, that's a minor point, but. Anyway,
it was like a Jason Aldean song.
And then we'll play one more thing here.
Yeah. And I can say the same thing that Hillary Clinton says about her election that she lost. I can say the same thing about the DNC who said it about the 2016 race. I can say the same thing about those in the Democratic Party from the leadership on down about George Bush not winning, that Al Gore did. But were any of them prosecuted? Were any of them put in jail? Were any of them held with no response to be able to get out? The answer is no. So yeah, you can raise that someone raised a question. And you know, in America, you are entitled to raise a question. You're entitled to question whether it was honest or not. That's the uniqueness of the First Amendment. That's the uniqueness of America. But you know what? You shouldn't be prosecuted for your thoughts. And the difference here is when Hillary Clinton said it, nothing happened to her. When they said it in Georgia's election, nothing happened to them either. You know what? When the DNC said it, nothing happened to them either. So stop using government to go after people who politically disagree with you.
By the way, Allan, I mean, I do believe that by saying that there's excessive graffiti, that might be grounds for being able to have a change of venue for the case. So that might be the reason why he brought that up. Kevin McCarthy going ahead and raising all these issues. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So, and by the way, I mean, I just have to say, unlike Clarence Thomas, who of course famously never discussed Roe v. Wade before the confirmation hearings in the 90s, I'm sure some of you have an opinion about this thing. So who wants to start? Yeah, Allan.
I'm going to say, first of all, I read the 45 pages of the indictment. I mean, Jack Smith, who's I think I call the assassin, did an amazing job in making sure that he said he's entitled to his opinion. He's entitled to say anything. But it then goes on to lay out a plot where they're doing the fake electors in every state, where he's crushing Mike Pence on Christmas Day. He's telling Pence calls him Merry Christmas, Mr. President. He goes, you can overturn this election. Then, I think on New Year's Day again, and he's pressuring him to, you can do it. And he says, no, I can't. And lawyers are telling him no. So there's a whole plot laid out in those 45 pages in every state, from Michigan to Arizona to Georgia. And McCarthy is so fucking disingenuous by saying he's just voicing his opinion. Hillary Clinton didn't put together a whole plot to basically overthrow the government. It's just bullshit. It's just crazy.
Well, just to sum it up from a political standpoint, and because I'm doing a lot of polling around this issue for some candidates I'm working with, the bottom line is this. For lack of a better legal term, this went from a First Amendment case to a documents case with leverage. Number two, the only way Trump can win in this case, he has to testify to show what they're claiming is true. Thirdly, they've got their lead attorney, John Lower, on TV twice, admitting to what actually happened with Mike Pence. So they boxed them in. And the other thing that happened yesterday we don't understand is they were hoping to counter this whole case with Hunter Biden's business partner. The business partner screwed their whole case because, in fact, nothing that they said, why I'm here, happened. So this, the majority leader just had nothing to talk about. It's perfect for the Democrats at this phase. They could still go in the wrong direction, but it was a perfect day.
Well, wasn't it Alina Habba, one of Trump's attorneys, who was standing out there in front of the courthouse? And when people were asking her about this case, she just went full throttle on Hunter Biden. I mean, it's like when you show up to at a Shakespearean play and the person's reading to you, Arthur Miller or something. I mean, it wasn't even close.
Well, the problem was they released the transcripts is what blew it. If they had not released the transcripts, this would have all worked. But when the transcript said he never said any of these things, and Comer and McCarthy were on TV saying just the opposite of what they released.
Well, I don't think that's the first time that they've released early. But I mean, getting back to it on the idea of polling, Ed, you mentioned, or actually, I think it's been mentioned that 71% of Republicans agree with the former president that this is all political. But 45% of Republicans said that if he were to be convicted of a felony, they would not vote for him. So I was kind of curious to see how you are reading that data.
Well, right now, I'm reading the data as I did with Bill Clinton with the Monica Lewinsky case. These numbers are similar for Bill Clinton. Everybody gathered around Bill Clinton. Okay, run again, run again, run again. So Trump is getting some of that. But what is key is that the hardcore, matter of fact, that 43%, another question, they also said a lot of that, the primary Republicans say the fact there were no documents that Trump stole. So this is all around, bunkering down. I don't care what you say about the guy. But there is cracks in the seams with what you said. But the bottom line, this is far from over until Trump is not on the ballot.
Jim, as a journalist, as a fisherman, as a person who's a public citizen, do you think that these trials should be televised?
Oh, I do. And we went through this in Detroit in federal court. We would have loved to have been able to broadcast the proceedings with Kwame Kilpatrick. We would have loved to have been able to broadcast the Detroit bankruptcy case that went on for a year and a half. And it was kind of funny. After it was over, we were told by Judge Rosen and by Judge Rhodes that if the media had requested a camera inside that courtroom, they would have allowed it.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure that that's the case, but they sort of told us that after the fact. Sure, I think, the public isn't going to get half of this with reporters' narration, courtroom sketches, the shots of the people walking down the street that we had to use for Kwame Kilpatrick. They're going to lose a lot of this. There is one little bit of ray of hope with this, though, and that is we saw this with the case of the co-conspirators in the kidnap and kill plot against Whitmer in federal court over in Grand Rapids. They allowed an audio feed to come out of court on that. Couldn't be recorded, couldn't be reused, but you could actually listen to the audio feed of that trial as it was going on. Just to go back to this latest Trump case, I think the wild card here is, and we haven't heard from any of them, and that's the 6 co-conspirators, mostly the attorneys, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and the others. Are they going to speak out on this, or is there a behind-the-scenes deal where they might flip on Trump and cut a deal with the federal prosecutors to get a softer landing? We haven't heard anything about that. And talk about polls. Before this indictment came out, there was a Marist poll that came out. It was done nationally, July 24th to 27th. And maybe this is a shifting of the tide, but 51% of Americans in that national poll said they believe Trump has done something illegal. 27% said at least unethical, and only 19% said he's done nothing wrong.
Wow, that's certainly a different thing.
It's interesting. I mean, and as part of the indictment there, they talk about Jeffrey Clark, who was one of the, associate attorney generals or deputy attorney generals or something like that. He wanted to send out a letter to all these states, these key states, saying, we found some irregularities, hold off on certification. And his bosses were like, there's no way in hell we're sending that out. So Trump was going to install Jeffrey Clark. And Jeffrey Clark said to his bosses, if you send that out, I won't agree to be the acting attorney general. Trump was about to make him the acting attorney general, and everyone in the upper echelon in the attorney general's office said, we're going to quit. The lawyers in the White House were going to quit, and Trump backed off it. But there is a conspiracy there, and for Kevin McCarthy to go and all these people trying to use it, Jack Smith intentionally avoided the First Amendment issues in this case.
Barb, I imagine that when these cases go to trial, that obviously the public has a right to attend, provided they behave themselves. I imagine that this is going to be a hotter ticket than Taylor Swift getting in there.
Will you get pink bracelets to go in? I mean, how are there pink handcuffs to go?
Well, I mean, I think that somebody's got to be humming the song "Bad Blood" going in. But how do you see this thing playing out? I mean, especially with some of the deadlines coming up. He's got several other cases on the docket, and of course, Georgia hasn't even come in yet. So there's going to be the possibility that there's 4 major trials that he's facing, all with severe consequences, running up into the election. Apparently, he's just now said that he wants the Supreme Court to intervene because this is, of course, the height of election interference.
And he's so against election interference.
He has set that up so that he's running at a time and he's using that as a shield. I mean, I was talking to Barb, I said it's a Netflix film that if you had seen it 10 years ago, you'd be like, there's no way the president's running, the ex-president's running, he's under indictment, there's a race for him to get to the White House, all the drama is happening. You'd be like, this could never happen in America.
It reminds me of the series 24 Hour.
Well, given the number of indictments, Alan, I mean, it might be moving for 30 for 30. So, let's see.
You knew it was going to happen when he left the White House on a helicopter. He's like, I'm not saying bye to anybody. Into the sunset like a fucking supervillain.
and apparently, Anthony, I mean, he kind of trashed the White House. I mean, I think maybe if we really were to do some digging, we'd maybe find some graffiti he left behind there. But getting to the point that Jim made regarding who the 6 co-conspirators are, I think one of the things that we're starting to see is who are not the co-conspirators. Mark Meadows, Jared Kushner, first son-in-law. There's a lot of different people who could have been listed as co-conspirators because they were certainly within the belly of that beast. It's intriguing, isn't it?
Well, the first thing I see is they're most likely the ones they're going to call as being witnesses, and you can't have witnesses and then be as targets, because the other ones if they do become witnesses, they're going to plead the Fifth Amendment, which doesn't solve any problems. So the ones that are not listed are most likely the ones they'd be calling as witnesses.
That's why they need to get them to flip.
Now here's a little bit of a bit of.
I want to ask you, from a purely legal perspective, what you think the most difficult part of this indictment is going to be for Donald Trump.
I think it's going to be to prove or to raise doubts about whether the government can prove his actual state of mind. If the government can prove that he knew that the election was fair and that it wasn't stolen, and that he corruptly and dishonestly and with an intent to be corrupt went forward with his plans, then they'll win the case. But if they can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt his state of mind at the time of these acts, they will lose the case. They may win it at trial because it's the District of Columbia, which is the most overwhelmingly anti-Trump district in the country, but they will probably lose it on appeal.
I think much of what many of us fear, namely that this will drag on, that even if there is a verdict, a conviction, for example, there could be an appeal that would last into the next presidency. And if the next presidency is held either by Donald Trump or by one of his acolytes or by virtually any Republican, there is the horrible prospect that this will all be wiped away.
You know, it's interesting that there's there's going to be a second state case. Right now, there's a state case in New York. There'll be a state case in Georgia, and the thing in Georgia is that they have to worry about is that with Governor Kemp there, he may bend and he could pardon Trump there. The only place that Trump would not be pardoned is in New York, which is probably the least of the important cases.
But isn't it true also the fact that the Georgia legislature and governor signed ability to, if she convicts, she'll lose her job and the case will be dismissed because they passed, I mean, that's on the books. They can actually dismiss the case right now, removing her from her position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anthony, what was interesting is yesterday, apparently in the court proceedings, the magistrate, Moxila Opadayo, comes in. She reads the docket, United States of America versus Donald J. Trump. He then has to present himself. She refers to him as Mr. Trump. Reports now are that he is seething over the fact that she did not call him president or Mr. President. A little bit too salty and missing the forest for the tree.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're not the president anymore. I mean, they're the only people who think that you're the president by standing in the middle of the White House saying, I'm the president. Like, so no, like, he doesn't have to call you president. They don't call Obama president, like, even on CNN anymore. Like,
I think they should have called him Defendant Trump.
Defendant number. Blah, blah, blah.
As I recall from a million years ago in public grade school at Holcomb School in Northwest Detroit. They told us that George Washington, they told him that they could call him, they were going to call him King George. They were going to call him this. And he said, I am Mr. Washington. You can call me Mr. President. You can call me Mr. Washington. But it is equally respectful, because we don't have an imperial presidency in this country, no matter what that stupid orange pig thinks. And he needs to suck on it if he doesn't. I mean, it's ridiculous. Of all the things, he's going to cry about everything, though. He's going to whine and cry about every single thing that happens. Because that's what he does.
On cable last night, everyone was pointing out, they were saying, oh, it's unusual that a judge would say, remind the defendant, you cannot intimidate witnesses, you can't talk, you can't talk to these people and stuff like that. And they know his MO, which he does everything to intimidate people. And I'm sure, he'll still try.
I think that they probably will end up televising these. The only question I've got remaining is whether there's going to be a laugh track that's installed. Because
we're looking at what some of us were around at the time in the 70s, the Watergate hearings. And
yes.
I think this is going to be, if it goes on TV, it'll be the equivalent of the Watergate hearings, where a guy was trying to overthrow the government, overthrow the election. I mean, it was clearly a coup. And if it would have happened in any other country, we'd be like, holy shit, what a third world kind of crazy thing going on here. This guy tried to pull it off.
So how many of you think that when there's going to be, of course, door-to-door coverage of the trial, which network is going to have Lance Ito as one of its expert analysts?
Nobody.
Anyone? Any hedging bets? Okay.
Nope.
All right.
The only thing I'm expecting is that, and I have to follow up on the fact, I think we're going to have an O.J. Simpson case. We're going to watch Trump in an SUV going from state to state to state to state, and we'll be following it.
Well, there was that other piece of I suppose for him, real frustration as the networks were showing his Trump Force One taking off from National Airport yesterday to go back to New Jersey, his plane having to wait in line at a very busy national airport. I'm sure that, and then when he landed at Newark Liberty International, the fact that the plane had to wait for other planes to taxi before he could then finally get to his apron. I mean, that must have taken about 10-15.
They said he had to wait in court 25 minutes before the magistrate judge took the bench. He had to sit there for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Jim, I think as the reports are, he was very fidgety. It seemed as though he was really out of his element, or his kind of cloak of bravado going there.
One thing I want to interrupt, though, is the one thing on Trump's side is the fact that there was a comment that the judge, reason why she was late, because they didn't think they followed the rules with Trump being able to pre-screen all the evidence and things that he needed to know before the hearing started. So she gave him the time that he was not afforded by his attorneys, prosecutors prior arriving. So I just want to make sure we understand it.
Yeah, and I think, Ed, you're right, that he was apparently in the courtroom reading the indictment.
Yes.
And to paraphrase from Madonna, read for the very first time, it seemed, that here he was, and he was like shaking his head and muttering, and he said, unacceptable, unacceptable. So there was also that. One last thing, someone mentioned that his attorney, John Lauro, has been making the rounds on cable news shows, and referring to John Eastman, one of the alleged co-conspirators, as being an eminent constitutional scholar, and also referring to him as Professor Eastman, not President and not Mr., because apparently he was dean of the law school at Chapman University. Had anybody heard of John Eastman on the Mount Rushmore of constitutional scholars, along with people like Felix Frankfurter and Lawrence Tribe? And
nope.
No? Anyone else? No? Going? Yeah, I hadn't heard that one. I mean, Linda Eastman, who then became Linda McCartney, heard of her. Probably more credible on matters of constitutional law.
Or Eastman Kodak, you could do that.
There you go. So the Republicans seem to be deploying a couple of interesting strategies. One is, of course, the talking points of the First Amendment applying here, and one of the best analyses I heard is that if you're going to a bank and if you're robbing the bank, and if you say this is a stick-up, that's not protected speech under the First Amendment. And I thought that analogy was beautiful. But the other way that they're trying to combat this is, of course, amplifying allegations of bribery involving Hunter Biden, and also implicating, at the time, Vice President Joe Biden into the fray. And someone mentioned that Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, really completely shattered the theory that they were putting on. Ed, I see you nodding your head on that.
Yeah, but because since last night, one reason McCarthy was really upset, because the moment McCarthy was going to speak, he had learned that Hunter Biden's partner didn't even as a matter of fact, Comer knew this was going to happen. Didn't even show up at his own private hearing with Hunter's partner. Comer did not show up.
Wow.
Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's interesting if you watch cable. I mean, you watch MSNBC, CNN. It's like Trump, indictment, all this commentary on what's going on. You go over to Fox, and it's like Hunter Biden. This Trump thing is a cover up for Hunter Biden, Joe Biden. This is a whole. It's so interesting, the different worlds, and it's like, hey, people who want to believe that are watching Fox, and people want to believe, the other side watch MSNBC or CNN. But
I was driving around yesterday doing errands and listening to as much news radio as I could get, trying to get information. And I put on AM radio, and I think it was 780, one of those stations. And this guy that was pronouncing himself as being balanced, and he listens to all the sides, and every caller was like, well, this really is pretty bad. This really seems like this is the end for Trump. This is, you read the indictments, and the first thing this guy said every single time was Hunter Biden. That's how he answered. The first words out of his mouth were Hunter Biden. And it's like, they're just going to keep at it. And we all say the same thing.
Yeah, that's all they have. You guys I'm sure are familiar with this, but every few days I like to go to the Lincoln Project website.
Oh, yes.
Produced
the new ad is great.
Best videos to show the absurdity of all of this and all of the talking heads. And maybe if we try hard, we could make one of their videos. It's so entertaining to watch the absurdity that they can put together in a minute or a 2-minute video so succinctly.
I think what we're going to see with the Lincoln Project, and I could be wrong, if it comes down to Trump and Biden, and there's some third-party candidates like Cornel West who may take away from Biden, I would have to believe the Lincoln Project is going to figure out some way how to maybe run a candidate, third-party candidate against Trump, something to sabotage. I mean, they're so determined to make sure he never gets back there, more so than the Democrats, Well,
it's partially their fault, isn't it? I mean, if Steve Schmidt hadn't given us what's her name,
Sarah Palin,
that's the one.
There you go.
I think that was a beginning of pushing these people into a thing, and I think Steve Schmidt's got a lot for the rest of his life to answer to.
My mother had a great.
There's one other option that Trump has going for him. I understand that the fine country of Israel potentially may sue Trump for up to $1 billion for missing articles of antiquity that have yet to be returned at Mar-a-Lago.
Interesting. But I was just saying, my mother had a great line. This was in 2008, I'm sorry, when Sarah Palin was running with McCain. And she said, I was in D.C. and I called her, and she says, you know what? That Sarah Palin, she thinks she's such a big shot. But you know what? In Alaska, even I could be a big shot.
Did she say I could have been a contender?
Right.
Well, I mean, there was that excellent HBO movie with Julianne Moore and Woody Harrelson. It's called Game Change, where Woody Harrelson played Schmitty and Julianne Moore played a pitch perfect Sarah Palin. I mean, I don't know who was better, she or Tina Fey in that, but really rather remarkable. So in all honesty, though, I mean, the Hunter Biden thing, he was clearly thwarted with his plans to be able to plead guilty to two misdemeanor gun charges in Delaware. It looks like that's up in a little bit of disarray, although not related, of course, to the bribery allegations. But is this going to just simply be what we're going to be hearing in parallel to the Trump cases for the next year?
I would have to say so, because there's nothing else for them to run. The only thing potentially for Hunter Biden is the fact they're going to continue it. But now, since his partner not saying anything, and actually, I think the court, by saying Hunter was misled by the DOJ, was a positive thing. The only thing that may help out Hunter Biden and Biden is the fact that the statute of limitations on these cases may be gone, so they're not going to be able to go back and charge them anyways.
All right. Well, here in Michigan, of course, we have our own manifestation of the Trump Chronicles. Former Attorney General candidate Matt DePerno has been charged with voter machine tampering, along with a couple of other people. Apparently, one of the county sheriffs was not charged in the special counsel's investigation. How do you see this related to the broader charges and the cases that Trump is facing? I mean, it seems as though they're inextricably linked. Are we going to see a little bit of an overlap in testimony?
I think, I think there's just so much little shit. I mean, his charges about illegally accessing voting machines and stuff like that, I don't think we're going to see that included in any federal cases. I think any of the electorate, the fake electorates, the state of Michigan has charged those 16 people with that. But it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised that they did that. I mean, there's just that's an overlap right there, because in the indictment there is a point where they're talking about Michigan and the fake electorates and all that stuff. So
yeah, but
I don't know. It's just,
she did that because the feds were not going to, and she didn't want them
to
not have any accountability.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're 100% right on that. I mean, I mean, all these people are doing stuff. I mean, we have to come to the realization that we have election laws and we have a democracy, and that they're intertwined, and that we have to uphold those. And if we don't, I mean, that's why it's so important in this case that Trump is being held accountable, because he tried to basically overthrow an election. I mean, we can't have that. We've never had a president. I mean, Watergate comes nowhere near. I mean, there were all these little things going on with people getting paid off in Watergate, cover-ups and stuff like that, but nothing approaches this. This is like, I mean, Watergate was a minor league issue that got blown up because the president was involved in it. But this is like right to the heart of our democracy. We've never seen anything like this, and hopefully we never will.
In this DePerno case, you all know who Chris Thomas is. He was the director of elections in the Secretary of State's office for decades, working under secretaries of state in both parties. And his comment after DePerno was charged is, in what universe is it okay for someone outside of government, outside the Secretary of State, outside the county clerk's office, or a contractor to take possession of vote tabulating machines to do testing? In what universe is that normal? It isn't.
Right. I mean, if it was a court case where you subpoenaed those machines and then through a court order there were tests or whatever, but not where that's why anarchy. I mean, with Trump, he just decided, like, rules, fuck the rules. He told, I mean, it's like him going to Mike Pence and saying, you know what, you and I, we can rob a 7-Eleven. I'm pretty sure that it's okay if we're president or vice president. And Mike Pence would be like, no, the law doesn't allow us to do that. And he goes, no, just go ahead and do it. It's okay. I'll take care of it.
Well, the other
I'll get you a lawyer.
I like to say that at least in Michigan, despite the Caramel group, the Magna group, is that the House Republican leadership and Senate at the time, when they came back and denounced what was going on. And so they've not hasn't pushed back on Dennis Nessel's cases, because they even refuted them when they happened. So I think there is some positive in Michigan. I think we have to show that there are Republicans in Michigan that didn't like what happened either.
Well, don't you think they want to distance themselves from those people as much as they can? They are a clown car. It's just, it's appalling.
We're seeing that happen every day. The traditional Republicans have taken a back seat because they're just so amazed at the clown show, as you describe it. And take a look at what Rick Snyder is doing now, the former governor. He's starting behind the scenes to work and get Republicans elected back into the state House of Representatives, and he's getting those traditional Republicans to write checks for that mission.
Oh, goody, Rick Snyder.
Well, Jim. I mean, on that thing, I mean, just a little bit of a tangent here. It looks like the Republican frontrunner candidate for U.S. Senate may be Mike Rogers, former congressman, former FBI, who I think certainly sees himself as being outside the MAGA hive. Will these issues that are plaguing the Michigan GOP, will they stick to him like a sword of Damocles? I mean, is he going to have to then be in the very dubious position of running away from his party apparatus in the state?
Well, I'm basically talking to some Republican donors nationally. That's one reason why they're beginning to try to raise money for him. Right now, I've already known that there's about $100 million committed to his overall race. If they can convince them to come back from Florida, and vacation in Michigan, because Republicans are scared. But there is money now being talked about on all the coasts to consider Mike Rogers seriously. They're only concerned with him. The fact is they view him as something from the Bugs Bunny cartoons with the rooster, the southern rooster, good yaw, but nothing there much to peck at.
Yep.
Okay. On the issue of the GOP locally, I mean, they're having some major financial issues, but apparently they're not alone. It seems as though there are other state GOPs that are having serious issues with finances. Is it going to be a matter that they're going to be challenged, especially down ticket with candidates?
I would say that Arizona states, some of the western states will have problems, but in Michigan, because of Snyder getting involved, he can reaches out to behind the scenes, the DeVosses and other people like the Pete Myers and things that they're going to pick their candidates. That's what's happening. What's happened in Michigan, there's no longer Ron Weiser, who's now on vacation in Florida or California, wherever he has one. So Snyder's been asked to pick up the mantle and try to get the old money to come back and help specific candidates.
Well, the Republicans, I mean, the Washington Post had a report saying that Trump, his campaign is basically they have no money because they're spending all the money on his legal fees.
40 million.
40 million.
40.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then you have the state of Michigan where all the, the mainstream Republicans are like, no, I am not giving any money to this party with a crazy woman leading the charge there.
Well, to jump into that right now, Karl Rove has said he's already raised over $30 million to go after Trump. The Koch brothers have raised $70 million and say they're going to go after Trump. So you were already seeing, you talk about Trump being in trouble. There's already $100 million from the old money, the national money, that have already committed publicly against Donald Trump in the primary.
So
by the way,
it can't be DeSantis.
Has anybody gone ahead and donated to Perry Johnson's campaign and gotten a gift card just so that he can be on the debate?
That guy's amazing.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw the speech he gave at that Lincoln dinner or whatever in Iowa. I mean, he was just like, "Hey, America!" It was like, I'm mad as hell, and we're not gonna take it anymore.
Well, Perry Johnson had the same problem with his ticket sales as DeSantis. It was give me $1 and you get a beer, and they didn't show up.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, now there's a campaign that's going south for the winter and the summer and the fall and the spring.
I think that the whole slavery issue is going to kill DeSantis. Even the Republicans don't want to touch that. And he's not a likable person. I think he's really coming off as very unlikable. And that slavery thing is like, nobody's going to agree with him on that, particularly, the black candidates who are running for 2024, whether it's for president or, any other thing. They're not going to side with a guy. That's insanity.
Did you guys hear this morning that was just announced that DeSantis is going to debate on Fox TV Gavin Newsom?
Newsom loves it. Yeah, Newsom really wanted to do this debate.
Oh, wow.
And DeSantis has agreed. It's going to be on Fox. And boy, political geeks like us, pop the popcorn. Let's go.
Well, the other thing, Newsom also agreed to the fact because right now some of the other money, the Democratic money, are behind the scenes saying if Biden is damaged, they want Newsom to run for president and replacement. So Newsom's actually gearing up as the default candidate if something happens with Biden. So he had to do this because there's a lot of talk on the Eastern money talking to Newsom. If Biden folds, will you jump into the race?
And do we think Biden is going to fold?
Not yet, but what I'm saying is the Democrats are scared. And because of that, they're trying to find an alternative, like LBJ dropped out of the race.
Sure.
But the bottom line, everything I'm hearing is that there's conversations going on with Newsom to consider this.
Oh, of course. And to some extent, Whitmer, too.
Yeah, I don't know if this is related, but apparently, according to the White House logs, Charlie Sheen has been making weekly visits to the White House with dragon blood. So, you know, I think Biden may hold out. So, but
I have Anthony. Anthony, I got a question as representing the younger generation here. Here we have Trump 77, Biden is 80. What are people engaged in? Do you get a sense that the younger group is engaged in this election, or do they not?
Yeah, I think we're all aware. I don't think it's that ageist to say that like the man is not physically like healthy. I mean, if he was 80 and he's still walking around like, you know, one of you young gentlemen, then like sure, you know, but like he's not. He's, you know, shutting down, powering off, 1% battery, like he's not up there, you know.
1%.
And I don't think Gavin Newsom is really that guy either. And I think this debate is going to say a lot because going on their platform where this is obviously stacked against them, giving DeSantis a platform like that and an ability to represent himself, because like they're not going to let Gavin ask the questions that would really tear DeSantis up, nor do I think Gavin is capable of doing those things because Gavin's a corporate shill too. Like,
yeah.
Well, the only thing that you saw, they did a test debate with Gavin Newsom with a couple of Fox News people, and Newsom did cover his butt. Okay.
Yeah. Sean Hannity.
Sean Hannity.
He's out there on YouTube, and Newsom, I think, did a great job against him.
That's why that was a test for Newsom. That was my understanding. That was a test market for how can he be in the debate.
Yeah, and I think he passed the audition.
Yep.
I recently there was a net population loss in California of like 300,000 people, while there was a net gain of 300,000 people in Florida in the past year. And I think that kind of speaks against Gavin in this debate as well. If he's going to talk about people not wanting to be around these crazy, like homophobic and transphobic policies of, you know, DeSantis, like why are people leaving California though?
Well, that's what Newsom answered in the debate. He says Texas and Florida are running a deficit. He's running a net profit and is twice what is the combined of Texas. So Jim he answered that question pretty good.
Yeah, he did. I don't remember the specifics of what he said. I just watched how he took control of that interview. You know, Hannity thought he could sandbag him on several points and didn't. I thought Newsom came out of that looking very strong.
Because he had all the facts on his side. He didn't speak from so Anthony, I'm glad you mentioned that, but the fact Newsom was prepared for that question, and he had all the facts to show that if you combine the net profit in Florida and Texas combined, California's in better shape than those two states combined.
Yeah, I don't remember
California, the third biggest economy in the world or something like that.
Yeah, yes.
So
I mean,
people are leaving because they can't afford it is the problem.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a combination, like you see in San Francisco. I mean, the prices to the cost of housing, cost of everything in San Francisco, LA is outrageous. Then you also have the homeless issue. Then you also have the issue in San Francisco of a little bit of lawlessness where people are, they're allowing shoplifting at a certain level and stuff, and I think people are kind of fed up with
up to $1,000. Well, but then again, Florida has Burmese pythons and leprosy, so
and DeSantis.
Yeah, and DeSantis, yes, all three on the medal podium. But just to put the statistics and the numbers in some kind of proportionality, California's population is 39 million. So 300,000 heading for the exits is less than 1%, and I'm not sure how many people are still moving to California. I think that statistic wasn't a net. It was just showing how many people were leaving. So, but what about the idea that Fox may be giving exposure to Gavin Newsom to be that alternate to Biden because they see Biden as being more viable in the general?
I think Fox looks at it like he's so far left liberal, this will be good for the Republicans. I think they don't see him as, I think they want to build him up and say, oh, you know, he's too liberal for this country, he's going to lose. So I don't think they're threatened by promoting him.
So wasn't, I mean, I guess, you know, politics always has its ironies, but wasn't Gavin Newsom going out with Kimberly Guilfoyle, who's
they were married. They were married.
And they were married, and apparently so might Kimberly Guilfoyle be to Donald Trump Jr., because she referred to Donald Trump as my father-in-law.
Huh. Wow.
Who knows what crazy stuff is going on?
Well, as a matter of fact, there's a very well-respected YouTube priest that used to date Fox News host too. So she has a lot of deep male friends from her past.
Boy, she's got around.
Yeah.
I remember the good old days when the governor of California was dating Linda Ronstadt. You know, Jerry Brown. Yeah, that's going back a little ways. And then of course there was, you know, Bonzo. Locally, we're still in the midst of the Ethan Crumbley Miller hearing to determine whether he will be eligible to face life in prison without parole. The testimony has been gut-wrenching. It's been very emotionally charged. Allan, I think we have a clip on that.
Interviewed Ethan and just looked at his profile, at his high level of isolation, lack of parental support, lack of guidance, lack of resources. So psychologically and socially, he can be considered a feral child.
You know, when you hear that, you know, I mean, you can only get angrier at the parents. I mean, the parents, he said that he reached out to the parents, that he was delusional, and instead they bought him a gun and took him to the gun range. I mean, that's the height of complicity, really, not even irresponsibility. They're complicit in this whole thing.
Can I speak to this? There are a lot of moving parts in this. First of all, I covered the shooting when it happened. I was out there all afternoon with the Channel 7 team. And shortly after I retired in September of last year, the two school board members who resigned from that school board, Oxford, in disgust because of how the school officials dropped the ball, and there was some more of that came out of these hearings, 3 days of hearings. So I've been watching this. I'll be honest with you guys. I contacted 3 of the 4 television stations here in Detroit leading up to that hearing saying, please hire me as a freelancer. I want to cover this thing. Nobody wanted to spend any money. So here I sit on the boat, right? But this really does come down to dueling doctors. The prosecution put on the state psychologist who had interviewed Ethan Crumbley many times and wouldn't call him psychotic, but essentially made the case that he's beyond repair. And the doctor you just saw, Colin King, on the stand was brought by the defense, Wayne State University educated, interviewed Ethan Crumbley over several hours, over several times, and says he is mentally ill. There was a lot more evidence about all of that and what transpired, but essentially laid it out to the judge that the mentally ill can be treated and left open the door for this judge to decide there could be hope, save Ethan Crumbley as a person. That, you know, this judge has a simple decision to make. It's life without parole, period, or it's any number of years, could be 40 years, 60 years, and then at that point with a shot of parole.
I think the best, I think probably the most reasonable.
Is the standard rehabilitation?
Say that again?
isn't the standard rehabilitation? It's not about whether he can be.
Well, and that would be done during all of those decades and measured along the way.
Okay.
I think the most sensible sentence that would satisfy all would be a life sentence with the possibility of parole, visiting at some point 20 years from now, 30 years from now, having the victims' families come in to have a say in it. I mean, the kid was 15 when the shooting happened. He's obviously mentally ill. I mean, anybody who's involved in any of these mass shootings, the guy in Pittsburgh who now they're putting to death, which will probably take a long, long time particularly since it's under a federal statute rather than the state statute. But these people are all mentally ill. And so we have to make a determination. But I think it's fair since he's 15. I think it would satisfy the parents to say life in prison, and then with the possibility of parole and whatever, 20, 30 years and revisiting. Look, Charles Manson had the possibility of parole. He never got paroled, but it was always up for consideration. Sirhan, the same thing. But
I don't think you're going to sell that, Allan, to the families of the students who were shot.
Yeah, maybe. You could be right.
They don't buy that for a minute.
Yeah.
I have, you think of this whole situation, and there's nothing. It's just nothing but heartbreak all the way around. I think to throw Ethan Crumbley in a prison hole for the rest of his life, it's just the whole thing is so horrible. There's no good ending to any of this. But I have to wonder if taking his mental, again, he's a kid. He's 15 years old. He's a kid, and I just don't know if prison is even the right thing. And I know that I think prison is just, there's nothing good about a single prison in the United States. It's awful. And we have this habit of throwing children in prison for the rest of their life for things that I don't think they fully understand what they did. And again, we've lost children in our family, and I have nothing. I think about those families and the agony that they go through. But I don't know if throwing agony on top of that is any help. I think we have to really start to think about what we do to young people who have fallen into this situation when we think about Ethan Crumbley. That's all. I don't know.
In the case of Manson and in the case of Sirhan, the targets are dead. It seemed as though it was confined. Here you have victims who are survivors, contemporaries. The idea that every time he were to come up for parole, this may end up becoming like a Groundhog Day. The kind of graphic testimony and the imagery is just going to be relived time and time again. I mean, full disclosure, I know two families whose kids were at Oxford that morning, and the kinds of trauma that they're going through just with this hearing itself. I mean, I suspect that that's going to come into the calculus about what to do. And it's going to be relived again during the sentencing when it comes to victim impact statements, I imagine, irrespective of what the judge decides in the Miller hearing. You're right, Barb. I don't think there's any resolution here.
But I do think that it's going to be either life with the possibility of parole or some like 40-year sentence, 50-year sentence or something like that. So
I know that every day the parents wake up and that's the first thing they think about.
Right. I mean, I'm sure some of the parents would love to see if there were a death penalty. They'd love to see that. Sure. And they want the maximum, which I certainly can't blame them for wanting whatever the harshest sentence can be. They want that, and totally understandable.
I can't imagine, Allan, that the judge, especially given the fact that circuit court judges run for re-election, would go ahead and give some certain number of years. Yeah. I think the L word would have to be in the sentence at some point, even if not for without parole, but putting a number of years on it. I just see that as being something that not just these families, but more broadly the community would have issues.
Yeah.
Well, with that, Allan, let's go to a commercial.
All right, let's do
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, and now it is that time.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, the time of the show for which we all look forward. Anthony, you've been far too quiet today, so I'm going to go straight to you. Who's your Schmuck of the Week?
I got to give it to the aliens that got captured and didn't do anything about this damn capitalism, man.
That's smart. All righty.
Is that why at Area 51 there's like berets and copies of Das Kapital? Is that what's going on?
I was just hoping they'd come down here and be like, "This is what y'all did." Like,
well, I mean that and the irony of like the commodification of aliens. I mean, if you go anywhere near Roswell, New Mexico, there is just so much that is out there as far as shirts and other merch that you can get. So very good, Barb.
I'm going to ignore the. It's hard. It's hard these days, but I'm going to have to say it's Mike Pence, the boy who couldn't lie.
Too honest.
He wanted to lie so badly. He wanted it on there, but he just couldn't. And despite himself, he is helping.
Did you see they have merch? He's putting out merch now that says just too honest or something like that. Hats and T-shirts and I mean the guy. It should also say too wimpy. I mean,
there you go.
That he could take such pride over actually doing the right thing. It's like, give me a break. You didn't break the law, so you're going to get patted on the head. You're the fucking vice president, and you obeyed the law. Well, wow.
He's a schmuck.
He's a schmuck. He's the Schmuck of the Week.
You all are so cynical. Come on, Barb. I mean, can't you give him credit that he grew half a pair?
It was so close to a pair. I want to get a little fly to wear in my hair for the election. So.
That was hysterical.
Jim, who's your Schmuck?
Schmuck times a million. This guy was a monster. He's despicable. Allan and I talked about this before we went on, and that's that Pittsburgh case, Robert Bowers, who went into the synagogue with an AR in 2018 and assassinated 11 people and injured several others, 6 others, including 4 cops who are responding, and he is going to be sentenced to the death penalty. As Allan pointed out, it's going to be a slow process, but now he can rot on death row. And interestingly, the family members of those killed, including the family of the 97-year-old woman who was killed, wants him put to death. And I think there's a lot of that same sentiment in Oakland County with Oxford. Yeah. He's I don't know. You tell me, what's the Yiddish word for that?
This is beyond Mimser.
Yeah, he's beyond a mumser. Mumser means bastard, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there is a word.
Yeah,
Allan, I think this is when you and Fish need to like kind of huddle
right.
somewhere.
Fishman might come up.
Expand the Oxford Yiddish Dictionary.
I was going to say Plaucher Dictionary, and I actually Googled synonyms to it, and I didn't find one that was appropriate. So
yeah, schmuck. I mean, schmuck is you probably synonym putz.
Yeah, exactly. Putz came up. Absolutely.
Mumser.
Jim, next time I think you need to set Google Translate to Yiddish to get it a little bit more precise. Just try
do that? I don't know. Can you do that?
Ed, who's your schmuck?
Well, in honor of past gestures of Barbara, I think the schmuck of the week is Robert Giuliani, who challenged the effectiveness between Italian and Jewish genitalia this week on size.
Rudolph Giuliani.
Rudolph Giuliani, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember your hand movement.
I was. We were exchanging some texts about that with Nancy Derringer and Violet, and I was saying yes. His stature, Giuliani's stature as a dick, may have grown in recent years.
So give us some more context on that, Ed. What spawned
what
Giuliani?
spawned it? Oh my goodness, really an extension there. It was coming out of his lawsuit of a lawsuit by one of his chiefs of staff or assistants, and about "you are mine." Okay, and he got into conversations about men and who's better than he, and he got into this thing. The fact is that Italian men are much longer than Jewish men because once Jewish men become married, they go limp, but Italian men keep using it all their lives, something like that.
That's the man. Giuliani's brilliant. That's all you can say.
No bottom.
I told you, Barbara, right away when I heard that.
Thank you.
And I thought The Abyss was Borat 2, but it just keeps getting better.
Oh my God, that's such a great scene where he's like in the bedroom. This woman says, "Come on in the bedroom and have a drink." He goes in there, and suddenly he's got his hand in his pants, and that's Rudy Giuliani. He's been boiled down to that.
Jim,
latest sex. I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead, Barb.
The latest sex accusations against him with the woman that he worked with, that he was running around saying "your tits are mine," and it's so distasteful. It's so disgusting.
Here's a little Lachen cup is what he needs.
But to be fair, Barb, didn't Michael Jackson say "your butt is mine"? I mean, come on, we got to be.
Look how that ended up.
Jim,
I can't handle this highbrow conversation.
Jim, okay, I'm going to bring you into that then, buddy. So you've got some contacts in the various news agencies and outlets out there. Is there any way that we can go ahead and get that photo, that still of Rudy Giuliani from Borat 2 to be there every time he is mentioned on the news?
I can do that. I can go in there and grab that and put it on our thing. We can hit it anytime we talk about Rudy Giuliani. We'll just see him like laying there.
It's probably in the Lincoln Project videos.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was also thinking, Reuters, BBC. Why not? Okay.
And really, for a guy who's getting laid so often as an Italian, it's interesting that he has to jack off there during the movie. But anyways, it's all other thing.
I saw it on the comment.
Well, the past is prologue, Alan. Okay,
yes.
Who's yours?
Mine is Kevin McCarthy. I just think he's so scared of Trump. He's arguing over the First Amendment issue. It's clear this is not a First Amendment issue. Yes, anybody can say this election was fucked. This election was stolen. But what he did, that was just sort of the propellant that helped to push forward all the conspiracy efforts, which are just so criminal at so many different levels. And for Kevin McCarthy to sort of be the parrot or the surrogate or whatever for Trump, he hates Trump. He knows Trump is not a good guy. He knows he's not a good candidate. And he said it at one point, and Trump just ripped him. And now he's doing everything. He's walking on his knees the whole time.
More genital jokes. Trump's got him by the balls.
Yes.
Steering him around, telling him what to do.
Okay. Well, I'm literally torn between who to have as being the schmuck of the week. Okay. It's U.S. District Judge of the Eastern District of Michigan, Stephen Murphy III. The Sixth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the drug conviction of Leron Liggins, a black man, saying his rights were violated by Murphy, who was upset over delays in the case and declared, quote, "This guy looks like a criminal to me." Murphy apologized 2 years later when the case against Liggins was finally ready for trial. He explained that he was mad at the time and, quote, I regret it. But the Circuit Court of Appeals threw out a heroin distribution conviction and a 10-year prison sentence and ordered a new trial with a different judge. The runner-up, or maybe, gold medalist sharing, was Megyn Kelly, who accused U.S. Women's World Cup star Megan Rapinoe of, quote, poisoning the team against the country amid the fact that 3 team members of the U.S. team playing in Australia and New Zealand for the World Cup did not sing. Actually, only 3 players of the starting 11 sang. The other 8 did not. The Star Spangled Banner when they were playing their opening match against Vietnam. In Auckland, New Zealand. This, of course, precipitates Kelly, who, remember, has told all of us, for those of you who need to take judicial notice, that Santa Claus was white, that the team are a bunch of morons, to be seconded by presidential candidate, former governor of South Carolina, former ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who agreed with Megyn on this.
Nikki.
Yes. So I think they both deserve the title of Schmuck of the Week. Anyways, thank you so much for taking us through yet another week of the week that was. Thank you, Anthony Bryant. Thank you, Ed Sarpolus. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Jim Kiertzner. And thank you, Allan Lengel, with the last word.
Drive home safely.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great week.